Let's return to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses on 1460 WVOX.
New York Post, you name it, and now he works for AM New York. And Todd has been in the thick of it in Boro Park. Todd, we're going to get right to it. What is happening in Boro Park, and what happened last week?
Oh, it was just pandemonium amongst the religious Orthodox Jews. You tell people that they can't pray the way they want, it becomes a very emotional issue. Things can get really out of hand.
But here's the problem. I think that a lot of people are trying to parse. Okay, there are cultural issues, but then at what point do we draw the line between those cultural issues and how it impacts on the rest of society? Because this all seems to be coming from the fact that there is a spike of COVID cases in areas that are populated by the Orthodox, which is in Brooklyn and also in Rockland County and in Orange County. And those the protests turned violent last week. I mean, there were a couple of journalists that got I'm on radio, so I can't say it. They got the daylight, shall we say, beaten out of them. And today, the lead guy, Heshi Tisler, was arrested last night. And apparently, there was a group that was picketing in front of the home of one of the journalists who had gotten beaten up. So therefore, the victim becomes the bad guy. I mean, how do you see it from your perspective?
Well, one of the things that I understand is people get they're emotional about religion. But wait a second. What does religion have to do with wearing a mask? And so you have a whole lot of people there that were not wearing masks that say, well, we'll be okay. That's something that doesn't exist anymore. And so you got a guy like Heshi comes out. He says, well, don't worry about it. Everybody's going to be fine. There's no COVID out there. One person was sick. Only one person. That's crazy. That's crazy. And yes, fewer people are dying, but they're still dying. And if you don't mind bringing home COVID to your grandparents or your parents or to your rabbi, then, well, go ahead and spread COVID. But that's crazy.
Todd, do you find that you as a journalist have a role as being not only someone who has to get the facts out there, but someone who also has to be a diplomat? Because I find that a lot of times people are just ill-informed, and you and I have both been in situations where people will say, well, they are curious, and sometimes we can impart knowledge, not to sound arrogant, but sometimes we can impart knowledge to them that may help them in making their decisions about what they do.
Well, the old phrase of "don't kill the messenger" was quite true going on in Boro Park, and even myself, I'm born in Boro Park, know a whole lot of people there, and I still found myself in danger. In one point, I had somebody in my face screaming at me, "Go home," and I said, "I'm not going anywhere." And it came down to a point where I almost had to fight these people. And it wasn't going to be one person, I was going to be 10. It would have been 12. I got behind the police, and I said, I'm in danger.
Hold
on. Todd, this is
and I don't say that too often, and I'm not afraid of anybody.
Todd, when we come back after the break, what I want to talk about, this is Charlie here, I want to talk about, this is not your first complicated news story in New York. You were one of the superstars of New York photojournalism, and right after the break, we want to hear more about how this fits into the broader context of stories that you've covered over the decades. So we'll be back in a minute. Mr. Engineer, I have a couple of seconds left, I hope. Right after this.
WVOX. Moses on 1460 WVOX.
Here we are again, folks. Out of the commercial, we are back, and boy, this is so much information to get into so little time. I think, Charles, you wanted to ask about...
Well, Todd, so here's the thing. You've been
Okay.
a photojournalist in New York City for a very long time. I saw a beautiful photo that you took. I think it was in either Tuesday or probably more likely Wednesday's New York Times. You were probably,
Yes.
I assume you were standing on top of a car or a truck. There were hundreds of Hasidim in the streets. A fraction, maybe 25% of them had masks on, maybe less. What is it like in that situation where you are photographing a problem? And I'm assuming this is not the first time in your career you've done this. What goes through your head?
Well, firstly, since I had COVID in March, I have a little bit less fear for myself. Okay, so if we put that aside.
Less fear?
And then I
You
say
have
to
less
myself,
fear having had COVID? That's counterintuitive.
Yeah.
Dr. Gupta is asking, wondering why.
I'm over here laughing. So Dr. Gupta. So no, I would still have the fear, Todd, because what we are learning is that a lot of studies are showing
I
that
still wear a mask. Sure.
Thank you.
I mean, look,
but we're learning we're losing our antibodies to COVID. So
well,
it's still a concern.
I seem to continue to give plasma, and they continue to find antibodies in me, and I say,
good for you.
Let's see if we can cure a couple more people.
That's
I'm good.
great.
But be that as it may, I mean, why? Why not wear the mask? It has nothing to do with your religion. It has nothing to do with anything. Instead, they target me. They target other journalists, and mind you, I have a great relationship with that community. I know a lot of people, and they protect me there. But I shouldn't have to be protected from my own from fellow Jews. I mean, what's going on here?
This is
Well, that's the question. And, well, so here's the thing. You talk about the insularity of the community, but it's really the Hasidic groups in Boro Park, along Eastern Parkway, Midwoods, a few of these other areas in Brooklyn. It's more than one subgroup, right? Because there's 7 different sects or more. They have
They're very different.
Varying levels of education, varying levels of access to the outside world. And so, you can't paint with a broad brushstroke, as people have a tendency to do.
Exactly.
My own 2 cents here, I think that this is a significant breakdown in communications on the part of the city of New York. I think that the needle at some point is going to point back to the mayor and the mayor's health office. They dropped the ball somewhere, because these are individual groups that are led by human beings who could have been accessed at some point much earlier on. And I think that this Hasidic community was a bit of a ticking time bomb. Because it's a cultural issue, right? I mean, Todd brings up the point. It's a mask. Just wear the mask. What's the big deal? Well, it is a big deal if you have a yeshiva education that doesn't talk about things like molecules and a deep commitment to the belief in science.
True.
Right? Then it's a little bit more complicated, and you need to do a little bit more community work to get where you need to be. I read in the New York Times article where Todd had a magnificent photo of a guy who said that he didn't know that a molecule existed until he was 21 years old.
And speaking of that, I want to get to Dr. Gupta, because we're talking about the statistics, how this impacts the community at large. I'm talking about the rest of Brooklyn, the rest of New York City, and also Westchester Rockland County, I should say, where there is a large Hasidic population.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So actually, what Todd witnessed, and actually probably that photo, is he's probably witnessed and photographed our next big hotspot, our next big super spreader moment. You had hundreds of people without a mask. The one issue that we were discussing during the break was that many people in that community may not seek out the medical treatment, may not go get tested. So we are going to have a lot more cases because of those riots than we will have actually documented. Now, people are saying that, well, a lot less people are dying. They are dying, a lot less are dying right now. But let's look a couple of weeks from now, maybe a month from now. We are going to see a lot more people getting admitted. to the hospitals. Once our hospitals start to get overwhelmed and our resources are strained, that's when we're going to start seeing the deaths again. That was probably a super spreader event.
Dr. Gupta, let me ask you this. So let's take the image of that Todd brought us.
Yeah.
You have a crowd of, at least 1,000 people, maybe more. And a small fraction of them, let's say, be generous, 20% of them are wearing masks. What is the likelihood of community spread in that situation?
Huge. We won't be able to trace that. We can't. We're not going to. So also, that's a community that's not going to necessarily, if they're rioting and beating up journalists, they may not be compliant with helping out the contact tracers. Yeah. It's huge. It's going to be huge. Even those who are masked, maybe those 20% who are masked, even they're still at risk.
Yeah.
Because it's not 100%. If they're in that crowd for that long, people are shouting. Even though
it's outdoors.
Even though it's outdoors, as we saw recently at a White House event, they had an outdoor event, and that was a super spreader moment. This is our next. I think this is our next ground zero for COVID.
Wow.
Right.
This didn't start with this. Back April 28th, I attended a funeral in the Satmar community of a rabbi who died of COVID.
Yeah.
And the people there, a good portion of them, were not wearing masks still, even though they lost their big rabbi to COVID. What does that tell you? I'm not really certain of that.
I don't have an answer. I think part of it is maybe they're taking their cues from President Trump on what COVID means and the implications. And I'm being straight out with that. It's not a political statement.
And
it's
irresponsible leaders in the community.
It's a fact, because here's the deal, and the Times article alluded to it. If you take the Hasidic communities collectively in New York, that's a red state. That is a red state, and they're taking their cues from President Trump, and who has consistently presented the sense that COVID is not that big a deal, and you don't have to wear a mask if you don't want to. And that is extremely dangerous. So I think that may be some of what's going on here. And it's a failure on the part of the New York City Health Department and the mayor's office. If they didn't connect with that community, which was so obviously a risk point to begin with, they ignored it. They overlooked it. Well, they had other things to worry about. Black Lives Matter and all the other things that have been going on for the last 6 months, and they let this slip away.
They dropped the ball. I mean, I think a lot of people dropped the ball. Todd, we're coming up to our half hour, and we have another guest on. It was just great having you on the show. We'll want to have you back again.
Thank you,
for
Todd.
an update.
Thank you. Anytime, you let me know.
Be safe. Be well. I miss you. I miss your little smiley face. I love working with you. So this is one of the perks of having endured being in the trenches for all those years. But stay with us, folks. We have another wonderful guest coming up, Oded Holzinger, who's going to talk about the heat islands that are also a threat to the communities.
WVOX. Let's return to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses on 1460 WVOX.
We are back. We are at that magical half hour, and it's going to be a good half hour. The last one was pretty informative, but we're going to have more information from our guest, Oded Holzinger, who is an urban planner, and he's with a group called Groundwork Hudson Valley, and we're going to talk about heat islands, which a lot of people I don't think are aware of. Heat islands are serious, folks. It's about global warming. It's about neighborhoods that can pose a threat to the greater community. Because those neighborhoods are not cooling off in the summer because they have been neglected. They don't have enough trees. They have asphalt that doesn't expel heat the way it should. And Groundworks has done a study, and they're going to really try hard to mitigate that. So, Oded, take it away.
Hi, Ardina. Thank you so much for bringing me on the show and for putting the spotlight on this very, very important topic of the heat island, specifically where we're focusing our efforts in the city of Yonkers. And let me first start by saying that the segment about Boro Park was really such a fascinating segment, and we really hope to see the direction that it's taking changing quickly, and this spike not getting any bigger. So yes, as you mentioned, the Climate Safe Neighborhood is the name of the project that we at Groundwork Hudson Valley are taking on. Groundwork Hudson Valley is a community-based nonprofit, environmental nonprofit. We are located in Yonkers. We're maybe most famous for our science barge in the Hudson River and for our part initiating and leading the Sawmill River Daylighting Project in downtown Yonkers. And now we're participating in this project that is actually happening nationally with other groundwork trusts throughout the United States. So the Climate Safe Neighborhoods Partnership, what we're doing in Yonkers is that we're exploring the relationship between historical race-based housing segregation, most known as redlining from the 1930s and throughout much of the 20th century, and the current and predicted impacts of climate change on our cities and on the most vulnerable neighborhoods. So working closely with residents and with other stakeholders and government agencies to organize, mobilize, and change the systems to make our communities more resilient to extreme heat and flooding. Those are the main environmental issues that we're looking at.
So Oded, Charlie Stern here. So environmental racism is not a new topic. It's not a new expression. I have not heard of climate safe neighborhood before. So if I'm an environmental Luddite, can you tell me what that means?
Yeah, so Climate Safe Neighborhood is the name of this project, of this partnership that different groundwork organizations throughout the U.S. are taking part in. But when we're talking about environmental justice, this is a project focusing on environmental justice, and to separate that from the general topic of climate change, what we're doing here, if we all know about climate change and global warming, and how there are different narratives around these issues, how much of it is human responsibility, how much is it just happening. Heard the vice president, the last debate, the climate is changing, right? Kind of letting go of responsibility. What we do when we talk about environmental justice is that we zoom into our cities and to our communities, and we see how some communities suffer much more from climate change than other communities, and how some communities are more sensitive to climate change. And in the climate change, in the Climate Safe Neighborhoods project, we're even going a step further, and we're looking at systematic racism. We're looking at how federal policies throughout the 20th century have a lot to do with this difference in sensitivity to climate change, and at the end of the day, with how certain neighborhoods are much hotter than other neighborhoods. Okay, Oded, due to the practice of redlining.
Got it. Oded, can you tell us how that's been operationalized in Yonkers, in Westchester? Where are the specific examples where, give us a couple of examples. The power plant is located here instead of there, and then fill in those blanks so we can understand what you're talking about locally.
Sure. Great. Okay, so again, our focus area is the city of Yonkers, and what we've done thus far, we're about a third way through this project, but what we've done so far is that we used satellite imagery showing us the average temperatures during the summer months in different throughout the entire city of Yonkers, and we use that to create to basically, we overlaid that with the redlining, and we found which neighborhoods are most sensitive. Now, you're asking what that looks like on the... So what that looks like essentially is that in some neighborhoods of Yonkers, mainly what we found from our analysis in southwest Yonkers, from Glenwood, Martin Heights, Getty Square, the downtown area, through all of Redford, the neighborhood of Redford in southwest Yonkers, we found that the average temperatures are much greater, and that's not only when you're looking at the computer screen, that's also when you walk down the street. If you walk down the street through some neighborhoods in Yonkers, you would find that they have much more trees, they are less dense, they have more parks, and so during a heat wave, you have more places to go to cool off.
And are you Oded, are you saying that actually corresponds to degrees of Fahrenheit that you can detect on your skin?
100%. What we actually see when we overlay with the redlining, which we talk more about, is that those areas that were redlined, essentially denied of credit during the 20th century, are areas that suffer from an average of 7 degrees Fahrenheit more than our neighborhood.
Okay, time out, because we have a medical expert here with us. Dr. Gupta, can you tell us what 7 degrees means to your health?
7 degrees, you know what, a matter of 7 degrees, that can be a difference between, you could start to overheat, you could start to feel some heat stress, heat exhaustion, especially in the summertime.
Right, and over a long period of time.
Does that contribute to strokes, heart conditions?
That's possible. You know, when it is hot out, when we're in it's 90 degrees out with 80% humidity. I mean, we are definitely going to have some medical issues from the heat.
97 could be a lot different than 90 in terms of its tolerability.
Exactly. But one thing I was reading about the heat maps that your group was doing. I guess I'm just so skewed as a doctor. I'm looking at those heat maps and I'm wondering if this was overlaid with our public health departments with kind of detecting coronavirus cases, because in the summertime you're looking at those heat maps, and the hotter areas, more likely people are going to go to a cooling center, or they're going to huddle in more into each other's homes under an AC. Probably even during the winter we're going to see. But am I wrong in assuming that those higher density areas, we're also talking about higher population density, correct? In those on those heat maps, is that right, Oded?
Very much correct. And when we talk about which populations are most vulnerable to heat, when it comes to the health implications, talking, of course, like you mentioned, Dr. Gupta, we're talking about people with diabetes, heart disease, so on and so forth. We can see actually nationally there is a very strong correlation between heat waves and increasing heat waves. But when you actually look at the dates of heat waves and hospitalizations, mostly heat-related hospitalizations, and that's why the issue of extreme heat in the topic, when we're talking about resiliency, and specifically urban resiliency, the issue of extreme heat is considered to be the silent killer, the silent disaster, because it's not like a hurricane that comes in, hits hard, we know how many casualties, we know how many people injured. Here we're talking about, at the end of the day, poor, vulnerable people lying oftentimes in their bed, on their couch, or being hospitalized with heat-related conditions.
Well, now I'm also thinking is even in the winter, as it gets cooler, using that information of those heat maps, we might be able to, from an epidemiological standpoint, for this next the second wave of COVID or even flu season, we might even be able to kind of even preemptively kind of know where the next hotspots would be in Yonkers, given those heat maps with the higher density. So
that's fascinating. That for us is very true, and we can definitely see that the cases of the coronavirus, in fact, is just increasing the crisis of extreme heat because people have to stay inside, because they can't go to these cooling centers, because they can't go outside to cool off. And during the winter, when we know how
okay, Oded, you're going to have to hold your point, which is a fascinating answer, because we're coming up against the break. So people stay with us. You're going to find out more about heat and how it's going to be mitigated in poor neighborhoods. See you after the break.
Let's return to Westchester Eye on the Radio with Peter Moses on 1460 WVOX.
Here we go again. We're into our final 15 minutes of the show. God, I wish we had more time because there's so much to talk about. Now, we have Oded Holzinger on the line, who is talking about heat islands, particularly in Yonkers. And the study was done about how poor neighborhoods have been neglected and how it has an impact on longevity, climate change, and a lot of implications for the rest of society. And before the break, we were talking about the correlation between the ability to predict where the next COVID virus hotspot will be due to density, and density in these heat island areas. So, Oded, let finish your point. Finish your answer to these questions.
Thank you. So we've seen in the first wave of coronavirus here in the New York City metro area, we've seen the communities most greatly impacted by the coronavirus crisis are those communities living more close to the poverty line and in density, and those that have less of the adaptive capacity to adapt to this situation and whether escape from those areas or stay at their home with less people around them. And what we learn when we do this heat analysis is that there are those issues, those design elements, if it's the tree canopy or impervious surface, but when we overlay with the redlining, we can see how those higher temperatures, the lack of tree canopy, and the impervious surface is also where it's majority-minority population and closer to the poverty line. So, and of course, that you're poor, you also are less adaptive to climate change. You can't necessarily turn on your air conditioner or pay electricity bill. So there is a correlation there. So I don't know if the heat maps are necessarily a way to predict where the next spike will be, but we see that just like the health crisis, also the climate change crisis is impacting minorities more than it's impacting more affluent communities. And here we don't only show what it looks like, we're also looking back and analyzing the historical mechanisms that brought to this situation.
I just had a thought, Oded. We had read some weird statistic in sociology in college about the correlation between crime and heat. And there was a statistic that said at 92 degrees, crime falls off because it's just too hot for people to go out there and start committing crimes. But that being the case, is there an uptick in crime in these areas because of the heat, in the way the heat causes agitation and anger, or is that being too kind of out there?
It's an interesting question. I think that the answer here is that, again, we're looking at a chicken and an egg situation, because just like we see those policies directing design that creates heat into certain neighborhoods, there are other research showing that there are more arrests and more enforcement directed towards those communities, minority communities, and those which were redlined back in the days. So I think that it's not a single answer here, and it's probably a chicken and an egg type of situation where we also have more enforcement in these areas. Now, of course, these areas are denser, and there's more unemployment and other factors that are great contributors to the issue of crime as well.
So this is definitely an equity story. The map that you keep referring to, the heat map itself, and I'm sure there were multiple maps, but one obvious example is posted on your website, which is groundworkhv.org. And if you go to recent news, you can see the map. And sure enough, the whole southwest segment of Yonkers is, covered pretty much in red. And that's where the higher temperature. So it's an equity story because there's a high density of Black and Latino people living in that higher density, higher number of people. That's, the story. The question is, how do you address it, Oded? Is it zoning? Is it building codes? Is it some new technology? I mean, where's the turnaround? And is it a 2-year, 10-year, or 50-year turnaround? How do you deal with it?
I think, it's a multi-layered problem, and it requires multi-layered solutions. But I think that what we do here is, step one, understand the problem and also understand our governmental responsibility to this problem and our governmental responsibility to overriding this problem.
So straight up, what do you think? What should government be doing that it's not doing?
So one of the things we're looking at, and again, we're at the beginning of our community engagement process. We are turning to the community to mobilize them and work with them to figure out what solutions, what practices, mitigation practices are best fitting for their neighborhood. Mm-hmm. But when we look at best practices for mitigation strategies from other cities, we obviously are talking about things like increasing tree canopy, which in Yonkers is a real problem in southwest Yonkers and down Yonkers. You could literally cross a certain street and go to a tree-lined neighborhood, and on the other side of the street there is a total abundance of trees, specifically mature trees that provide shade for the person walking down the street, and also for the buildings and the roads that are soaking in that heat during the day and releasing it later on during the night.
All right, well, that sounds problematical to me because a tree could take 30 years to grow to maturity. So what do you do?
Correct. So that's one solution that is more of a long-term solution. We're also talking about man-made shade structures, and we want to work with the community to think about where those should be located and what they should reflect, what they should look like. So that's another solution. On top of that, you, of course, have, when you're talking about design, or it has to do with building materials, and we see that those communities that were previously redlined due to the lack of access to mortgage and credit also suffer from poor housing stock, so the building material is of lower quality. And then we're talking about simple solutions like green roofs or reflective roofs that could help mitigate the issue of heat. But when we do this work, again, we're trying to not stay to this bird's eye view and look at the global problem, but instead we're trying to really think about the experience of the person walking down the street and what could help this experience. And there are mitigation strategies, and there are also emergency preparedness and emergency response tools. If it's cooling centers, if it's community networks for that. And New York City did a fabulous job this past summer. The Mayor's Office of Resiliency giving out more than 70,000 air conditioners to those households identified as most vulnerable to extreme heat. And we've seen more extreme heat waves this summer than ever before. So it's really a growing problem.
But in all honesty, Oded, there have been some massive developments in downtown Yonkers, particularly on Main Street and on Ravine. I mean, huge high-rises with probably the equivalent of 1,000 renters. And I don't see any trees on that street, nor do I see reflective roofs.
Oh.
So, basically, in the vernacular, what's up with that?
No, that's true, and I think that part of what we're hoping to achieve through this project is that the next step is getting the political will to analyze those areas and really map out and identify which locations are most feasible and for this type of intervention, whether it's man-made shade structures, whether it's changing the type of asphalt to asphalt that is more absorbent, or planting trees. But also when you talk about those big developments in downtown, that's why it's important to remember that we're not only looking at the temperatures, we're also looking at the sensitivity to the temperature, and usually the residents of these newly developed properties will have either access to some type of outdoor space or air conditioning, and we're trying to really reach here the community that don't necessarily have access to this in-house heat mitigation ability. So we're talking about older housing stock and not necessarily the new development, but new development brings in more money to an area, and if you'd ask me as a urban planner, I think that the environmental impacts and mitigating the urban heat island should.
Whoops! Did we lose you? Okay, it sounds like we may have lost Oded. Nitin, I'm going to let you have the last word because we're coming up to. Oops!
I think we hear him.
Oh, I don't know.
We're down to a very short number of minutes. I just wanted to say one thing. Peter is our friend. I'm sorry for his loss. I'm looking forward to seeing him back here as soon as possible, arguing, answering questions, asking the tough questions. Peter, we need you back here.
Okay, and let's see, we still have a few minutes left. So, Nitin, I think you had a question, or you got it back. Okay. So, Nitin, I'll let you have the last question.
Oh, sure. So, actually, Oded, are you there? Are you here with us?
I'm here. I'm back here.
There. Got a little worried. All right. So, what are the things that kind of anything urban planning? It's people. It can be very difficult to kind of move forward. What would be the simplest baby step to try to help mitigate some of these the heat effects that we could do early on? That might be cost effective and.
We gotta say it in 10 seconds, so that
yes,
because we're coming up to the end of the show.
Next time you see on the forecast a heat wave coming, call the vulnerable people in your community, call your grandparents, all the people you know are sick, and make sure they are safe. The community network is the key here.
Thank you, Oded Holzinger. So if people are interested, you should go to the Groundwork website. They are a fabulous organization that deserves a heck of a lot more credit than Groundwork.hv. Who deserve a heck of a lot more credit than they get. Come back next week and have a good week while you are waiting to listen to us again.